Hey guys, what's up? Today we're going to be discussing the winners and losers of the Cinderace ban in the SSOU metagame. That's right, Cinderace was banned from SSOU alongside Magearna. For more information on that, check out my video on Sunday discussing the ban of both from the SSOU metagame. In addition to that, check out my video on the winners and losers of Magearna if you're curious about that. It was posted on Monday. And finally, I'm also going to be making a video on the survey results that led to these bans. I'm not sure if that'll be before this or after this. The sequencing of it all is so rough, and I've yet to record that video, but just stay tuned, guys. A lot of SSU coverage. These bans are a big deal, and I also want to hear what everyone else has to say, so please comment this video, comment in that video, comment in all the videos. Even if it's just saying comment, but I'd really love to hear your input, in all honesty. Just let me know, Love hearing some nice, lighthearted discussion of the OU metagame, especially when you guys are not trying to kill me. That does happen sometimes, so maybe lay off that. But jokes or not jokes, if you guys aren't happy with the state of the metagame aside, let's get on into it. There are two different categories of winners that I've grouped this into: offensive and defensive winners, and then there's one category of losers, just general ones. And the reason why there aren't as many losers is because not many Pokemon did well against Cinderace. That's part of why it got banned. There are only so many Pokemon that were really doing super well against it, and now are suddenly going to do worse. And honestly, these Pokemon are all going to retain some viability regardless, so there aren't really many true losers, but there are a lot of winners. Cinderace being gone from the metagame opens up so many Pokemon in the metagame. There's going to be a lot more Pokemon seeing viability, and the metagame is going to be more diverse than ever, and I am super excited about that. Let's start off with the offensive winners of the ban of Cinderace in the SSOU metagame. The first one is going to be Kartana. Unsurprisingly, a Pokemon that was 4 times weak to fire, that was slower than a fire type, and had nothing to really one-shot it, was bad against the fire type that we are discussing, that being Kartana versus Cinderace. Kartana was able to get a strong Life Orb knockoff, which was easily able to 2-KO Cinderace in the switch-in, meaning that Cinderace was not a very good defensive check to it. In fact, it wasn't one at all. Cinderace was more a revenge killer, but given how common it was to go for the U-turn, Volt Switch, and Teleport, Cinderace was able to get in regularly, and it gave Kartana some stiff competition as a fast, physically attacking breaker in the metagame. As it was faster, it was similarly strong, and it had more coverage to go off of, coupled with the U-turn, making it a greater pivot. And in addition to that, it outright defeated Kartana. Pyro Ball was a nightmare to it, much like any other fire-type move. With this burden being lifted off the grassy Paperclip's back, which, wow, is not a sentence I ever thought I would utter, all of a sudden Kartana's viability is going to go and increase a little bit. Admittedly, it's not going to increase drastically. Kartana was already a strong top 15 or so Pokemon. Maybe now it'll border upon the top 10. I'm not sure yet. We're going to have to wait and see how other Pokemon improve. There's some confounding variables there. We might see Pokemon like Tangrowth, which is going to be able to do well against Kartana, also improve in usage as Cinderace did well against it. Or we might not see that, and Kartana might just completely devour the entirety of the SSU metagame. I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty fun to me, so we'll have to stay tuned and find out how well Kartana does. This is a sample set. You can, of course, use Smart Strike or even Sacred Sword over Synthesis, and in addition to that, you can run Choice Band, Choice Scarf, etc. There are plenty of things you could do with this Paperclip, so be sure to use its flexibility wisely and clip together whatever papers you wish to. Moving past Kartana, there's also Rillaboom. Rillaboom was already a strong Pokemon in the metagame, much like Kartana, but Cinderace's ban is going to mean it gets even better. In fact, arguably, Rillaboom is going to be one of the best anti-offensive options in the metagame now, due to Grassy Glide being strong under Grass and Train, coupled with very strong options like Knockoff to cripple resists like Tornadus T, and U-turn to seize momentum when a potential checker counter is switched into. All in all, the Grass Monkey has everything it needs to be a very strong and consistent option in the SSU metagame. While it might not be the best breaker due to the limited nature of it running Choice Band a lot, and also potentially being a bit more in the fragile side, it still has decent enough natural bulk to get in consistently, especially when paired with the right momentum, and it has an ability that lets it gain a little bit of health each time, so it's not even close to Glass Cannon tier, making Rillaboom a pretty well-rounded member of bulky offense and balanced teams in my opinion. Grassy Terrain provides quite a bit of support, although it is a bit of a downside if you're using an Earthquake user, but that aside, in my opinion, Rillaboom is a very promising option right now, and I'm really curious to see how it will develop with the young metagame. Next up, we have Volcarona, a Pokemon that was actually checked pretty well by Cinderace. Cinderace was able to lift any hit at +1 and absolutely nuke it in return, dealing a strong damage from Pyro Ball or Gunk Shot, and even potentially being able to revenge kill it with Sucker Punch if it lets its run that. Volcarona was definitely also held back by the fact that Cinderace was a fellow fire type, and you really aren't using multiple fire types in many teams, and if you are, then one of them is probably Heatran, which at least has a defensive presence, or Cinderace, which at least can function as a revenge killer. Overall, this left very little spot for Volcarona to really thrive in this metagame. It was kept in check a lot. It was also just diminished by various metagame trends, and because of this, and also the inability for it to break through things like Blissey and Heatran, it was actually pretty limited. But now I think we're going to see a bit more. It's almost as if the first domino fell in helping improve the viability of Volcarona, which, yeah, okay, Volcarona is going to miss Magearna being in the tier a little bit, but that aside, I firmly believe that it's going to be a better time for Volcarona than it was when Cinderace was in the tier, so we're going to have to wait and see how that pans out. Let me know what you think on Volcarona, and if you like it in the metagame, or if you think it'll still do poorly in the metagame, down below. I'm very curious to see, as this is going to be one of the more polarizing and intriguing options in the metagame. Also, I'm not including a sample set here because you could run offensive with 3 attacks, you could run Safeguard, Mono attacking, you could run 2 attack Substitute or 2 attack 3s. You could run a whole slew of things on your Quiver Dance Volcarona. That versatility makes me just say, hey, go out and try it, see what fits best with your team. I'm not going to limit you guys to one set that I'm going to suggest here. Try it all. Why not? Next up, we have Tapu Lele. Tapu Lele is also a very strong Pokemon in the SSU metagame now. It was before, but now it's even better without Magearna and especially Cinderace, a strong revenge killer to it. That's one less faster Pokemon and has strong physical attacks that can absolutely devour Tapu Lele. Gunk Shot almost killing it twice over, believe it or not. Now, with less Magearna and especially less Cinderace, Tapu Lele is going to be able to spam its moves and get in safely a lot more often, which is basically what you want to do if you're Tapu Lele and Psychic Drain with Choice Specs utilized. So, needless to say, this is a very promising time for Tapu Lele, and if it's ever going to find some consistency in the metagame, I believe it will be in the coming days, weeks, and months. Next up, we have Hydreigon, another Pokemon that was held back by Cinderace's revenge killing prowess, especially given how accessible it was with U-Turn. The thing is that U-Turn and High Jump Kick absolutely smashed Hydreigon after the stab boost from Libero, making it so that Hydreigon was not able to get in safely and consistently be relied on as a potential special breaker in these matchups, so you had to be very careful there. And this opened the door for other Pokemon like Dragapult to see more usage during that metagame, as Dragapult at least resisted Gunk Shot, was immune to High Jump Kick, which is important, resisted Pyro Ball and U-Turn as well, only really fearing Sucker Punch, and it has status moves like Thunder Wave to really take advantage of that. So that was definitely better for the other Dragon, but now Hydreigon may be able to finally thrive like it did during the Spectrum metagame in this current metagame. And last, but certainly not least, let's not forget a forgotten warrior, a one-time Uber, and also a fellow fire type. Blaziken is finally going to have a bit more room in this metagame. Not only does it have to compete with one less strong, fast, physical attacking fire type that was absolutely better than it, but also this coverage is pretty damn strong now, as we might be seeing a bit less Toxic Spikes and a bit less Slowbro, which, yeah, it's a bit of an indirect and direct kind of benefit to Blaziken, but all in all, I'm really curious to see how Blaziken's going to feel in the metagame, and I'm hoping that we're going to see a little bit more of it, or at least some viabilities. It's really been dire. We haven't seen any Blaziken at all recently, and I find that quite disappointing. How do you guys feel about the lack of Blaziken, and do you think we're going to see more of it? Let me know down below in the comment section. I'm really curious to hear what you guys have to say. Let's move on to the potential defensive losers in the metagame. I kind of was bordering on calling them utility, but honestly, a lot of these Pokemon are more hardcore walls that benefit from Cinderace, which perhaps is a wall breaker, being removed from the metagame. Now, the key difference between wall breaker and stall breaker before I proceed is that Cinderace, while it threatened stall, it really only did it with support of things like Future Sight and Spikes, and potential Volt Turn from Tapu Koko or Specs Magearna. It didn't actually break it itself due to the prominence of things like Toxapex, Hippowdon, Quagsire on these builds. Much on the contrary, it only did so with great support, so stall itself isn't really going to see much, uptick in usage, as you could fill in a lot of the Pokemon we just mentioned as potential breakers, and they'll do just as well, if not better, against stall teams, potentially even without the support, so something to keep in the back of your head, in my opinion. But regardless, these Pokemon are going to at least be a little bit better. I don't think the relation will be as big as offensive Pokemon, as you're still going to see the same walls, as a lot of them have multiple purposes in the metagame, and that's all fine and well. These Pokemon are Ferrothorn, Corviknight, Blissey, Clefable, Tangrowth, and Swampert. The first 5 are pretty obvious. I'll get to Swampert in a minute, but let's go through the first 5 first. Ferrothorn and Corviknight, just 2 steel types that really didn't appreciate a Pyro Baller balling out in the metagame, if you know what I mean. Really feared being one-shot in Ferrothorn's case, 2-shot in Corviknight's case, and couldn't do enough in return to really punish it, besides Ferrothorn threatening with a knockoff or Corviknight threatening with a Brave Bird on switching, which it didn't like taking, but again, definitely were deterrents to their usage. Made it so that you saw more bulky waters instead of bulky grass types, or more other defoggers like Static, Zapdos, or Flame Body Moltres over the option of running Corviknight. As for Blissey, well, Blissey always is the target of Volt Switches from special attackers, which invites in Cinderace, and then Cinderace can threaten it with High Jump Kick, so you gotta get the hell out of there if you're a Blissey, and that was a pretty bad dynamic for Blissey. All of a sudden, it wasn't able to check things in the metagame, and you saw a lot more Slowbro Galar, which at least was able to soak up things and regenerate out, or especially defensive Toxapex, which would kind of do it all. So yeah, that was really bad for Blissey. Blissey saw a huge hit in usage when it arguably checked just as many things as before, if only because one strong, fast physical attacker was able to abuse it. Next up is Clefable, which feared Gunk Shot and was forced into more passive roles in an overwhelming metagame. Now Blissey is wide open, but you can run sets like the standard physically defensive knockoff Combine Stealth Rock set. Whoa there, what am I saying? Non-Combined knockoff Stealth Rock set. You can also see actual offensive sets like Combined Life Orb, or potential other variants of Clefable as well, given how versatile it is. Whatever you want to do, Clefable can and will make it work on your team, and without Cinderace and Magearna present in the metagame, that gives it and others a lot more room, in my opinion. Next up is Tangrowth, a physical wall that could not wall the best physical attacker in the metagame, Cinderace. But now with that gone, it's able to do very well against things like non-mixed Garchomp, almost all Landorus T-variants, and things like Barraskewda, which we see as menaces on rain teams. That presence is going to be very important in this metagame. Even if it's vulnerable to hazards, specifically spikes, it's okay, as with Rocky Helmet or Generator, it's able to force flat a chip while also recovering off the chip it takes from those Pokemon, which can go a long way towards cementing Tangrowth as a very viable Pokemon that will eventually beat OU by usage. And that is my bold prediction of this video. Tangrowth is going to rise to OU eventually, so hold on to that, and when it happens, say, hey, Finch was right, and if it never happens, you can eventually say, oh, well, Finch sucks. So, yeah, what do you guys think of Tangrowth? I'm curious to hear. Let me know down below in the comments as well. Now, the last one is perhaps a bit more controversial, as Swampert did pretty well against Cinderace 1v1. And with physical defense, it should be able to 1v1 it. But think about it like this. Swampert takes a couple U-turns or takes a high jump kick in the switch, and it doesn't punish you with Rocky Helmet or Rough Skin or Intimidate. It takes that, and then you can kind of just U-turn out with Cinderace, and that's that. And the next time Cinderace comes in, it can 2-kill you. Or the time after that, after another U-turn, it can 2-kill you, and all of a sudden, your Swampert is shit out of luck. Landorus T with Intimidate and Leftovers goes a lot further, and it can do a lot more offensively. Garchomp can force a lot of chip with Rocky Helmet plus Rough Skin. Those Pokemon, therefore, shot up in popularity, whereas Swampert, which seems to happen every generation, died down in popularity, falling well down in user statistics. While it doesn't do poorly 1v1 against Cinderace, it doesn't do as well as the other grounds, and those took up valuable team slots that could be going towards Swampert considerations or other ground-type considerations, and they just didn't. That was a huge problem for Swampert, who saw its viability drop significantly in the metagame. Nowadays, it can return to running a special defensive set, which thrives against things like Heatran in this metagame, and it can actually retain some viability as a stealth rock and ground. I don't think it'll ever be top dog, or even where it was at the start of the DLC 2 metagame, where the Flip Turn plus Stealth Rock set was actually surging in usage after I used it on this channel first. I'm calling that. I'm not saying I invented Swampert. I'm not saying I was the person who came up with it. Someone told me to use Flip Turn, but I popularized it a little bit. I'm taking some credit there. Taking some, just a little pat on the back. Little pat on the back. But anyway, I think that Swampert's going to see a little more usage now. It might stabilize somewhere in between 20th and 30th in the usage statistics. So that'll be interesting how that develops in the metagame. Unfortunately, there are some losers of the Cinderace ban in the SSOU metagame. So sad react only for those Pokemon. These are Pokemon mainly that did well against Cinderace, be it through checking it, countering it, revenge killing it, or whatever it may be. They're more defensively oriented Pokemon in general because nothing on offense actually dealt with Cinderace ever. And honestly, Cinderace arguably did better against offense than it did stall, which is a common misconception that a lot of people have. And that Cinderace wasn't really a standalone stall breaker. There were Pokemon that were able to check it, like Quagsire, you see often install physically defensive Powdon, Rocky Helmet, Slowbro, and Toxapex, but rather when it's paired with support, all of a sudden it leads to sequences where those Pokemon can't actually check it. And that is humongous for Cinderace and Cinderace teams. These Pokemon, though, they're able to at least do the trick 1v1. Forget about looking at the context for a minute. And they are Toxapex, Garchomp, Landorus, Pelipper, Slowbro, and surprisingly Dragonite. Pretty cool addition to the metagame in my eyes. As for Toxapex, we saw a lot less usage of Zen Headbutt, and Electro Ball, while it did pick up at the end of Cinderace's reign when paired with Tapu Koko, was still seen as more of an other option than a primary option due to the need for Tapu Koko team support, which led you to very limited amounts of viable archetypes with the two of them, as they're both pretty fragile Pokemon. So, overall, Toxapex was great at 1v1ing it, and also Baneful Bunker and U-Turn is huge, super clutch. But yeah, Rocky Helmet, Force Chip, etc. So that's pretty big for Pex. But Pex, again, it didn't like Future Sight or, Electro Ball and Spikes and whatnot, so you got to be careful. Next up is Garchomp. Garchomp is a great answer with Rocky Helmet, forcing a ton of chip if it goes for U-Turn or High Jump Kick, which are the only neutral moves you have in it besides Sucker Punch. And that, coupled with the fact that it was a good bulky rocker, made it so that Rocky Helmet Garchomp was pretty damn common in the metagame. Same goes for Landorus T. While it ran leftovers more than Rocky Helmet, it could run either of them, and it was able to really blank Cinderace, only taking 25 to 30% from a Pyro Ball after Intimidate, healing up a little bit with leftovers, forcing threatening moves of its own while also potentially getting up Stealth Rocks, making Landorus T a serviceable response to Cinderace, at least in the short haul before it got worn out by repeated entry. Next up, we have Pelipper. Rain, Water does well against Fire, really that simple. Also, it was able to live 2 gunk shots for max defense, and that was pretty cool too. Not like a super hard counter. If Rock's up, forget about it, but it was an okay, sufficient self kind of semi-check, if you will, and Rain teams had options like Barraskewda, Revenge Killer, or Crawdaunt to get an Aqua Jet off, or, they ran Tornadus 2 with Weather Ball to outrun and one-shot it, etc. So, Rain was able to do pretty okay against Cinderace. Next off is Slowbro, a Pokemon that many people might have higher, but non-Rocky Helmet, Heavy-Duty Boots Slowbro, that is, didn't actually do super well against it. It got U-turned on over and over and over again, trapped in the vortex between U-turn, then you switch out, and the Volt Switcher forces Cinderace back in, and then you're like in a loop again and again and again, and Slowbro eventually gets worn out. But wait! If you're okay with a little hazard vulnerability, you can actually run Rocky Helmet, punishing Cinderace each and every time. And that's what picked up in usage on Slowbro over the time of the Cinderace metagame, making it a little bit easier to wear out and potentially check. Admittedly, it was not a foolproof game, but it worked. It definitely did work. So yeah. And last but not least, a favorite of Storm Zone and many others, a fan favorite in fact, Dragonite. With a defensive set running, Ice Beam, Earthquake, either Heal Bell or Defog, while it was passive against things like Clefable and Slowbro, was able to absolutely demolish Cinderace, countering it, taking multiple gunk shots if needed, and also just always preserving multi-scale thanks to heavy-duty boots, making it a really serviceable check to Cinderace. Even regardless of the set, it's always going to 1v1 it, but it could even be a pretty serviceable switch in as well. That's pretty cool. So yeah, what do you think of Dragonite? Do you think it'll still retain viability? I do, so I'm really excited to see that. But with that said, how about all these other Pokemon? What are your personal winners and losers of this ban? What do you think will shake up as a result of the Cinderace ban, both directly and indirectly? Please let me know down below in the comments. I love hearing from you guys all. In addition to that, I hope you all have a great day. Be sure to like if you enjoyed the video, comment if you want to say more, and I really love hearing from you guys, and subscribe, because only 30 to 40% of you guys are subscribed. I'm trying to get quickly to 6,000, from 6,000 to 7,000, so let's get it, guys. Check out the Twitter or Discord if you want to stay in touch or interact with me anytime. And have a great day, guys. All right, bye. I'll be talking to you later.